and tried to scoop it off the carpet with a spoon. Then I said, stop. She stopped and finally trying to keep going after I said stop. So I slapped her stupid ass. Tomato busted in my mouth and almost got on my face.
Ladies and gentlemen, what you just glimpsed is 90 seconds, just 90 seconds, of the life that 8-year-old Amari Hall, her 6-year-old sister Zier, and their 5-year-old brother Jakari Hall lived in the care of this defendant. The state will expect the evidence to show you that the young child in the middle, who was slapped so hard that her head swung back, is 8-year-old Amari Hall. Her brother Jakari, who's 5, is laying on the ground in the video blindfolded with a sheet covering him as he is stomped and slapped by this defendant. And the evidence will show you that 5-year-old Zier, who is sitting in the corner sleeping, who is kicked and pushed so hard into the wall by this defendant, and the one who was slapped so hard and her food taken away, that all 3 of those little children were under the care of this defendant and their mother, Brittany Hall. Ladies and gentlemen, over the next several days, the story of the life, the murder, and the subsequent investigation into the death of Amari and the abuse of her little sister and little brother will unfold before you. It will unfold in the form of testimony, in the form of videos, in the form of photographs. And what you will learn is that 4 months after this video was made, Amari is dead. She is found naked, wrapped in garbage bags, and thrown into the woods. And the evidence will show by this defendant. This story begins on November 21st, 2021. The Gwinnett County Police Department receives a phone call from the mother, Brittany Hall, of the children. The same Brittany Hall is also charged in this indictment, along with this defendant. You will learn that once the police arrive, they are told that Amari is missing. They are greeted by a very calm Celeste Owens and an equally calm Brittany Hall, who tell them that little Amari, they woke up and she's gone. They are all living in an extended stay hotel called the Hometown Studios, located off Jimmy Carter Boulevard. The police arrived at room 251. Small room, 2 beds, a little kitchenette, a bathroom, and that's it. That's where all 5 of them live. The police arrive, and they were told that the last time anybody saw Amari was around midnight. And then Brittany, her mom, wakes up, and Amari's gone. This defendant tells the police, oh, I left around midnight. My sister, Diamond Owens, picked me up, and I got back police that little Amari is autistic. And they provide a photograph. Except the photograph is when Amari was much, much younger. You will learn. And at this point, every resource of the Gwinnett County Police Department descends onto the hometown studios. There's helicopters, there are canine officers, there are dogs, there are civilians looking, there are police officers, they are walking on foot, they are looking inside cars, they're looking behind dumpsters. The chief of police calls in officers from every single precinct in Gwinnett County to find Amari. They go to every single door of the hometown suites and look, and they don't find Amari because she's not there. There's an incident command that's set up. Civilians are helping, law enforcement officers are looking. And at some point, the officers on scene decide, we got to do something else. It's November, it's cold, Amari's missing, we've got to find her. The Special Victims Unit of the Gwinnett County Police Department arrives. You will hear from them, you will hear what they do. Detective Sorensen is the lead detective at that point. You will hear him tell you that he arrives to fairly calm defendant and Brittany Owens, who tell him, yeah, Amari never does this. She's homeschooled. We work from home. They never go anywhere. We never go anywhere. We just go to the store. The detective is trying to create a timeline because time is of the essence. They've got to find this little girl. They can't get it straight. They can't get their story straight. So after 6 hours of searching and not finding anything, the detectives bring in this defendant, Brittany Hall, and the two children who are in that hotel room, Zier and Jakari, back to the Gwinnett County Police Headquarters with this defendant, then begins to speak to the detective there. She tells them she has no idea where Amari is. She doesn't know anything about where you can find her. She tells the detectives that Amari would wet her bed and that she had all kinds of behavior problems and she was autistic. But you'll hear from Amari's grandmother, this is right, who will tell you that all three children lived with her at some point not much further before this, and those problems never existed. That Amari was in kindergarten, she was in school, and those problems never existed. That she didn't even know she was autistic. This defendant tells the detectives at that time, yeah, I was one of the caregivers. I would watch her. It was just me and Brittany the whole time. The kids call me Daddy. I homeschooled them. They were homeschooled. They were always with us. I don't know where she is. I don't know where she is. And she tells them, yeah, I was with my sister, Diamond. She picked me up at midnight. I was with her all night long. Well, what she doesn't know is the Gwinnett County Police Department's a little bit smarter. So they go back and they find out that this defendant was being very untruthful and was never with her sister. Was never picked up by her sister, and you'll hear from her sister as well. The evidence will show you that she lied. The police have also gotten a hold of this defendant's phone, along with the phone of Brittany Hall. They asked for the phones, it's procedure. They gave the phones to both the officers. The officers, while they're speaking to Celeste, are diligently working to get into the phone, to get the information on the phone to see if they can help. It will help find Amari, because remember, the only thing they cared about, the evidence will show, would be finding Amari. What they also see is Zier and Jakari were covered in bruises, marks, Jakari and Zier at the police station that night. You'll hear from retired Lieutenant Randy Work, who will tell you that he bought the children pizza, and they ate that pizza so quickly you couldn't even believe it. Celeste Hall is then charged with false statements because they know that she lied to them about where she was the night before. Then they find in her phone just a glimpse of what you've seen, because unfortunately, these are not the only videos in that phone. There are a total of 15 videos that you will see in this trial. And they are this defendant and Brittany Hall together, individually beating these children. And that is why Brittany Hall's name is also on this indictment. But we are here today for this defendant. They also found a search history on the phone. That search history would show the searches that this defendant looked up on the internet on November 19th. 2 days before, she reported Amari missing. One of the things that you will see is that Celeste Owens, when asked by the police, where were you November 19th, as they're trying to get a timeline to figure out where Amari might be, this defendant tells him, I was home all day. All day. But her search history on November 19th, starting at about 4 in the morning, going on till about 3:45 that same day, showed some very disturbing searches. They included what to do when a child doesn't listen, lakes near me, why is it so hard to find missing people, how do sewage drains work, why do kids run away, how do I report someone missing. And they also find a search history and communication to a local U-Haul dealership. Now, at this point, the detectives are very concerned. So the Special Victims Unit now hands over the investigation to the Homicide Unit of the Gwinnett County Police Department, who now become involved and take the lead in the investigation of this case. You will hear from Detective Blackburn, who will tell you that he has now taken over and he followed up on this U-Haul search. And ultimately, the evidence will show that he is able to go to a location nearby, the A1 Mini Storage located in Gwinnett County, not far from the hometown studios. And lo and behold, they find, as the evidence will show, this defendant who shows up, dropped off at that location, likely in an Uber, walking in with a mask on her face into the location around noon and renting a cargo van. Her name is on the contract, her address is on the contract, her phone number is on the contract, and there's surveillance video of what the evidence will show. This defendant walking in, renting a cargo van, getting into that cargo van, the license plate is noted and seen, and driving away from the U-Haul location. You will learn about flock cameras, which are all throughout the country, and especially here in Gwinnett County, that can track license plates, track movements and locations of particular vehicles. And you'll hear about the movement of that van. That around noon or so, when the van is rented by this defendant, It is then driven to a Family Dollar, and there's surveillance video there of this defendant shopping for bleach and latex gloves, both of which happened to be found subsequently in a search of the room in which they were living, those two items. Then you will find the evidence will show that that van went back to the hometown studios around 1:40 in the afternoon, where it remained until dark, around 5:55, where there's more surveillance video, and there is movement of that vehicle. Although you cannot see who the person is, you can see someone walking around. And ultimately, that van leaves the hometown studios and heads towards Tucker. Coincidentally, where Amari is found disposed. You will hear and see information from the location data of this defendant. And you will see that the van around 6:35 is spotted on off camera headed towards the location where Amari is eventually found. At approximately 6:55, her phone's flashlight turns on. At approximately 6:58, this defendant calls Brittany Hall for a very short call. And then about 7:20 or so, she arrives back at the A1 mini storage facility where she went to the U-Haul cargo van. Had the van for several hours that day. Coincidentally, you will hear that the mileage on that car matched up with the lead detective who drove the route that it would have taken to drive from all those locations to where Amari's body was found and back. You will see surveillance video of this car, this man being dropped off. You will also learn that the only time this defendant's location information is turned off on her phone is when we believe, and the evidence would show, this defendant would have been in the location. The van would have been in the location where Amari was found. Brittany Hall, who is the mother of these children, eventually tells detectives that she thinks she knows where Amari's body is and takes them to the location. They are unable to find Amari that night, and trust me, they searched. But the detectives were not ready to give up. So on November 23rd, the next morning, 2 detectives go back out and they find Amari. They find Amari in the garbage bags. On the side of the road, animals have begun to eat the parts of her. You will hear from Dr. Downs. He is a medical examiner, and he will tell you about Amari's broken body. Dozens and dozens and dozens of injuries and scars and marks and fractures. Her lacerated liver will tell you about her. Ladies and gentlemen, there are many, many counts on this bill of indictment. But ultimately, it revolves around the death and murder of Amari. The count of malice murder charges both this defendant and Brittany Hall together. All the counts charge them together. You will learn, ladies and gentlemen, that it took 2 people to kill Amari. It took 2 people to cover up Amari's murder. It took 1 person to dump her body in the woods, you will learn. It took 2 people to beat Jakari and to beat Zier. And that's why In this bill of indictment, they are charged as parties to a crime. That means people together who work together to accomplish the crime. And it doesn't matter. The evidence will show who delivered the fatal blow, who didn't, because you will find Dr. Downs, the medical examiner, will tell you that Amari suffered from battered child syndrome. There was a series of different injuries that ultimately led to her death, and she weighed 54 pounds. She was malnourished. And we'll hear that from Dr. Downs. I wish this was a story, and that this was the story of Amari's murder, of life, and the investigation, but it's the reality of what you will see over the next many days. And ladies and gentlemen, I ask you to pay attention, because sometimes the truth is right before your eyes. Sometimes the truth is right there, crystal clear. And the evidence will show, through the testimony of the witnesses, through the photographs, through the battered body of Amari, that this defendant is guilty of every single count in which she is charged, which is 20 out of the 21 counts in this indictment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kazan. Mr. Greenwald.
Thank you, Judge. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is opening statement. It is not an argument. It's not telling you what to do. It is letting you know what we expect the evidence to be in the case. We expect the evidence in this case to conclude sometime on Friday, what's today, Tuesday. So opening statements is sort of a roadmap of what we expect the evidence to be. We do not expect that there will be evidence, specific evidence, that my client, Celeste Owens, killed Amari. They're both blamed for it, and you will ultimately have the indictment that was read to you, that has been referred to, out with you ultimately when you go out and deliberate the case. And you'll actually see the 21 counts in the indictment, wherein they're both charged in 19 of them together. Because I submit to you, there will not be specific evidence in this case that pinpoints that my client delivered the fatal blow or blows to Amari. Now, I'm not an idiot. Standing up here and talking about the death of a child, purported cruelty to children for the two other children, it's heart-wrenching. I get that. It's a tragedy. I get that. But you all, as the judge just swore you in, gave you the final oath, you all are sitting there because you all told us over and over again that you were fair and impartial, right down the middle, not leaning towards one side or the other in the case. Although, as you've heard from Judge Duncan, there's a presumption of innocence that surrounds and protects my client until it is overcome by evidence sufficient to convince you all beyond a reasonable doubt. Not talk, not what we surmise, not opinion, but evidence. There is not, I submit to you in this case, ladies and gentlemen, there is not going to be any specific evidence presented to you all that my client delivered any fatal blow to Amari. Now, the charges are broken up, and I know they were read to you. You don't have them in front of you. You don't have the indictment. But counts 1 through 4 deal with the allegations of murder and felony murder. And Ms. Nizam is right, they're both charged, Brittany Hall, and you want to use the word mother as it pertains to Brittany Hall, who was my client's, we expect the evidence to be, girlfriend at the time, but we expect the evidence to be she, not Celeste, was their primary caregiver. Mom, Brittany Hall, who's not here, not on trial, but her name is going to be all over the place. These are her 3 children. She's indicted in this case. She's charged individually and as a party to the crime, purportedly with Celeste, of killing her own daughter. And so when the police come in and testify, when witnesses come in and testify, when videos are played, recordings are played, photographs are put up on the screen for you all to see, I ask you to please keep that in mind. Brittany's not on trial here this week. No, Celeste is. But in going over the photos, the recordings, the evidence, the statements, the testimony that comes in this case, they have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Celeste killed Amari. That's counts 1 through 4. And I submit to you, the evidence is not going to be there that she did. We expect Dr. Downs to come in and testify Friday morning, the end of this week. That cause of death was blunt force injuries, malnutrition. Well, again, you're going to hear evidence we expect that it was Brittany Hall, the mom, who was their primary caregiver, charge of dispensing food, giving them food, and was also their primary disciplinarian. And you'll see videos of Ms. Hall, I expect, kicking, brutalizing, stomping on, hitting her own children on the floor in that motel room. Only the allegations are, as it pertains to Jakari and Zier, that this occurred in July at the Congress Motel, which I think you heard is now closed. So those are the allegations pertaining to the other 2 children, that you get the cruelty to children counts. Charges with Amari are from November. There's going to be supposition, there's going to be opinion, there's going to be guesswork. But ladies and gentlemen, at the end of the day, I'm going to come back, whether it's Friday or Monday of next week, and ask you, which I'm sure you will do, that you've paid attention to what's gone on in this courtroom over the last 3 or 4 days by the time I come back to you all, and return a verdict of not guilty as it pertains to Celeste Owens. Now, as the lawyers go, we'll turn our podium this way. The witnesses come up here on the witness stand, swear an oath to tell the truth. Jurors don't get to ask questions. So it's our job as the lawyers, yes, we're advocates for our side, but we have to ask those questions that we perceive are obviously relevant and that you want to know the answers to. So at the end of the case, when we come back before you in what's called closing arguments, we can state our positions based upon the answers to those questions that we pose to them and the evidence in the case. When I come back, I'm going to ask you to hold the state to their burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt, return a verdict of not guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Greenwald. All right, the state ready to call its first witness?
Yes, Judge. I think we did discuss potentially some stipulation.
All right. Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, the defendant and the state have agreed to the following matters. They are stipulated as fact for evidentiary purposes during the course of the defendant's jury trial. Number 1, On November the 21st of 2021, police were called to the hometown studios in Gwinnett County, Georgia, in reference to a missing 8-year-old named Amar, M-A-M-A-I-R, parentheses, Amari Hall, hereinafter the victim, close parentheses. Defendant Celeste Owens and co-defendant Brittany Hall both told police that they woke up that morning to find the victim missing. The police were provided a description and photograph of the victim to aid in their search. 2. Defendant Celeste Owens was asked to voluntarily come to police headquarters and speak with police as the victim had still not been located. During the interview, the defendant told police about her whereabouts during the time the victim would have gone missing. Officers were able to confirm the defendant was lying and she was arrested for false statements. 3. Officers obtained a search warrant for the defendant's phone, and an extraction of the device resulted in locating her internet search history along with videos of the victim and her 2 siblings. From the extraction, officers were led to obtain several surveillance videos from the hometown studios, a local U-Haul vendor, a Citgo gas station, and a nearby Family Dollar store. 4. Officers also obtained images from flock cameras of a U-Haul that police confirmed was rented by the defendant. The U-Haul van was seen on flock cameras driving in the direction of where the victim's body was later found. 5. The victim's body was found naked with garbage bags wrapped around it, and the victim was located in a wooded area in DeKalb County on November 22nd, 2021. 6. On November 23rd, 2021, an autopsy was performed by Dr. Downs of the Gwinnett County Medical Examiner's Office. The cause of death was determined to be multiple blunt force injuries to the victim. The manner of death was determined to be homicide. The victim also suffered from malnutrition. 7. The defendants were charged in the bill of indictment as parties to a crime to numerous counts including malice, murder, and cruelty to children. The defendants were subsequently severed after a motion filed by Brittany Hall's attorney was granted. 8. Video surveillance of the hometown studios was viewed by the initial officers on scene. The footage was from an hour or more prior to the police arriving and did not show co-defendant Brittany Hall walking around the hotel as was reported by her. The surveillance also did not show the defendant or the victim during that time. This testimony will be admitted by the officer who the information was relayed to. 9. Statements made by the severed co-defendant Brittany Hall are contained in reports and body camera of the responding officers and describe the circumstances surrounding the victim's disappearance. These out-of-custody statements explain the conduct of the officers and therefore will be allowed in for that purpose. These statements would involve a description of the victim, a time frame of the last time she was seen, the items the victim would have taken with her, that the victim was homeschooled and that was on medications for seizures that she took with her since the medications were not in the room. 10. Similarly, co-defendant Brittany Hall eventually led officers close to the area where the victim was found. The state will solicit testimony from officers regarding the information provided by her for the purpose of explaining the officer's presence at the location. Those statements should be admitted. 11. The quote, "be on the lookout," unquote, or BOLO, generated by law enforcement containing information about the circumstances surrounding the victim's disappearance, as well as a photograph of the victim, should be admitted. 12. There are no issues or objections to a business certification form provided by an authorized custodian of records for the following in lieu of live testimony. Surveillance video from Hometown Studios for the relevant time frame. Receipts for room rental at the Hometown Studios for the relevant time periods. Surveillance video from A1 Mini Storage / U-Haul rental location. Receipt and contract for the U-Haul van rental in the name of the defendant. Surveillance video from the Dollar General located at 7050 Jimmy Carter Boulevard for the relevant time period. Receipt from the same Dollar General above. Surveillance video from the Citgo located near Stone Mill Way for the relevant time period. 13. The flock images obtained through detectives are admitted into evidence through the testimony of law enforcement officers who ran and or received the images. 14. Counsel waives a Daubert hearing as it relates to the testimony of medical examiner Dr. J.C. Downs and his status as an expert witness in the field of forensic pathology. 15. Photographs taken of the U-Haul van with Arizona license plate AL06742, taken by crime scene investigator Kay Cochran at Gwinnett County Police Headquarters, will be admitted without the testimony of said crime scene investigator, as foundation will be stipulated to for those photographs. Are those the stipulations as propounded by the state
Yes, Your Honor.
and by the defense?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.